Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're learning Mishna Kesubos, Perek chapter 12, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 1. Okay. Hanoiser Seisha. A person marries a woman, and she has a daughter. She has a daughter from a different husband. Upaschi imai kadei sheyazan es bita chamesh shanim. She makes up with him an agreement that he has to support her daughter for 5 years. It's not his daughter. It's her daughter. And she says, basically, they make up in the marriage that he takes upon himself to support her daughter for 5 years. As the Baratanura points out, and they bring out here in the notes, he made his commitment binding by writing it in a document, or by performing a kinyan, a formal act of acquisition, or by declaring it before 2 appointed witnesses. It's not just they made up between each other. That's not going to be binding. There has to be something more there has to be something more done to make it a binding agreement. So chayav lezona chamesh shanim. He's obligated to support her daughter for 5 years. Now, this is how far it goes. This is how far this goes. And the following is going to show you how far it goes. Nisas la'acher. She married somebody else, which means he divorced her, and she married somebody else. And she makes up with him, meaning with the second husband, that he's going to support her daughter for 5 years. The same deal that she made with the first husband, she's now making with the second husband. The second husband is also obligated to support her for 5 years. Now, the first one cannot say, azuna. Literally translated means that when the mother comes to me, I will support her. Meaning, if we'd be married, still, I'd support her. But now that we're not married anymore, I'm not going to support her because we're not married anymore. Answer to that is, too bad. You made a deal for 5 years to support her. You didn't stipulate that it's only an obligation while they're married. And therefore, even if they're not married anymore, he's got to still pay those 5 years of support to the daughter, even though the second husband took on the same obligation. But rather, he's got to take her food over to where her mother is. A daughter is by her mother, and therefore, you have to take the food over to her. Now, they bring down here on the bottom something that's very interesting, not something that is practiced in our times, but the Baratanura brings this down. The Mishnah assumes that the girl is living with her mother because a daughter lives with her mother. A daughter is different than a son who remains with his mother only until the age of 6, after which he goes to live with his father. That is what's brought down, and that's what the Gemara says. And that was the practice time of the Gemara. How that works nowadays, I don't know. But the point is that at least in the time of the Mishnah, and as the Gemara says, a son remains with his mother until 6. After that, the father can say, "I want him by me," and that's where he goes. But the daughter is going to be by the mother. Is assumed she's by the mother. That's where she remains, and therefore, even though they're divorced, the Mishnah says you've got to bring the food over to where her mother is, meaning to where she would be. Now, they also bring down here in the bottom of the notes, if the daughter does not live with her mother, happens to be she's not living with her mother, he must bring food to her wherever she does live. Okay? At the end of the day, he's obligated to feed her. So wherever she is, he's got to give it to her. All right. So therefore, the first guy cannot say, basically, if we'd still be married, I'd support her, and now not. Nope. That wasn't the deal. The deal was a deal to support this stepdaughter, this girl, this woman's daughter for 5 years, and no matter what, you got to do it. Now, at the same time, we know the case here is that there's 2 husbands that obligated to have to support her for 5 years, right? And it would seem like there's some overlap here, right? They're both overlapping in their obligation. So too, both of them cannot say, meaning both husbands, meaning one the ex-husband, one the present husband, We'll support her together. Right? We'll support it together. We'll split it. 50-50. We'll split it. That's not the deal. Each one made a separate deal. Each one has a separate obligation, and each one's got to fulfill it. Okay, so what do? They give her double. You give her the double amount of food. What are you going to do? Ella echad zana v'echad. One actually feeds her, and one gives her the value of the food. Okay, so that's what happens at the end. If their obligation overlaps, one actually supplies the food, the actual food. One, because there's no point of giving her double the amount of food, gives her the value of the food. How do you decide which one does what? So here on the bottom, they bring down, the girl can choose which one provides food and which one provides money. She can decide. She probably figures like one of them gives better food than the other one, or, whatever it may be. But she can decide who gives what. Now, what if she says, you know what? Forget the food. I'll take the money. So I bring down here from Tiferes Yisrael, she cannot, however, demand money from both. That not. The obligation was to support, was food, was to support her, was food, which means, theoretically, I'm just going to assume right now that if, let's say he didn't have food and he gave her the money, if he didn't have food to give her, right, he'd give her money to buy food. But the point is, one of them actually, the obligation is to actually feed her, to give her what she needs to eat. Only because of the fact that there's no point of double, then we say the other one gives money. But for her to demand money from both, that she can't do. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now, the next